Hey, thank you so much for the invite. I'm hoping that you will enjoy this talk. My name is Filipe, and so let's start right on. Let me share my screen, my slides. Where are they? If the team can show my slides, I'll be much appreciated. Thank you. All right then. So great talk, Josh. And let me start. Not share slideshow. There you go. So the talk for today is TFG, Docker, Flutter, and GCP. And with this talk, my goal is really to simplify things. First of all, really quickly, my name is Filipe Barroso, and I'm a senior Flutter developer at 𝗙𝗶𝗹𝗶, a small startup. I'm also a community organizer for Google Developers Group in Lisbon, Portugal. Also the organizer of Flutter Portugal, of course. And I've been a software developer for more than 10 years now. Most of my career was around Android development. I had some years as machine learning engineer. And of course, with Flutter, I had to bet full on Flutter. It's simply amazing. And so with this talk, my goal is at the end, we are going to automate a deployment of a Flutter website, a website made with Flutter. And the goal is really, okay, we are using GitHub, and through GitHub and through some pull requests, you will be able to deploy to Firebase, okay? I'll introduce here Firebase, but you could use something else, any other website, any other hosting platform. And because we are lazy as developers, we want to automate everything. So that's why the reason of the Flutter web with cloud builds, and then also with GitHub through triggers of the pull requests. So let's dive in. I will make some assumptions. If you want to follow through with this talk, at the same time you try to code, this talk has some requirements, such as, of course, you need to have Flutter, you need to have Git installed, Docker to prepare your images, and also the Google Cloud SDK to connect with GCP and make all the changes. While in this talk, I will present you with the UI changes. Everything can be done also by the command line. And of course, this is an excellent opportunity to check out the new website by Flutter team. So go ahead, go and install Flutter directly from there. Also, now just jumping right in. This talk will be divided in 3 parts. We'll assemble our projects and everything we need. We will create then the trigger that will trigger the builds and deploy the website itself, and then just see everything in action. All right. So let's start with assemble. With assembling, you'll need what? You'll need, of course, some code for your website. In this case, Flutter. We'll need to host it somewhere. In this case, again, it's going to be GitHub. And then we are going to deploy that code of our website into Firebase hosting. And of course, this will all be connected through Google Cloud Platform, through the Google Cloud trigger for pull requests. For the Flutter project, it's simple, okay? I'll assume that you have Flutter installed. You simply run the Flutter. You just make sure that you have the Flutter channel unstable, just to be aware of everything. Then you create a new project. You can just Flutter create awesome project. Let's call it henceforth the awesome project, and check for devices. Here, for check for devices, you should see, if everything went well, you should see one of the options as the web, besides the devices, the web with Chrome, okay? Just to make sure that you have all the dependencies. If not, you can simply check the documentations really quickly. One solution can be just rerun Flutter create dot, and check the channel URL, okay? And in the end, let's just be sure that you run Flutter build web, so it outputs the correct files, or the same reason Flutter run web release. That's a minor issue there. So that's with the Flutter running. When you run that awesome project, you should see a similar file structure like I'm showing right now. So, and the most important folder here is the build folder, because it's in the build folder that we have all the resources that we want to work with. It's the resources that we are going to deploy. And even if you wish, you can simply enter that folder, the build/web, and inside that folder you run a web server. In this case, I'm running a Python web server, a local web server, and I'm running the local environment. And in this, and as you can see, the page will run the simple and bread and crumb website for Flutter. This is the simplest demo app that exists. It's just tap and update. So yeah, now you have your Flutter website. Of course, I'm not coding the Flutter website, but now you could simply work on your Flutter website to make changes and then just build, and you can see your own work done. So yeah, step one done. You have Flutter installed, you created the project, and the website source is ready. So second step, GitHub project. Make sure you have an account. You create a GitHub project, and using the code that we just generated, you push that code. You can follow the instructions at GitHub. They are quite direct. You create a remote and then push all the changes there and profit. Well, not just yet. You also need to create a Firebase project, okay? You have the account, go to firebase.com, and then you need to, after you create the project, you need to go to the menu and select the hosting, okay? You need to activate the hosting. Can you profit now? Not just yet. We need still some more steps, okay? We have the Flutter, we have the GitHub, we have Firebase, and now what we are missing? Yeah, the cloud build. For this step, heads up, you will need a billing account associated to it, while there's a really nice free plan with the Google Cloud Build still. And if you are creating a new account, you will have $300 of credit. So plenty of money to test and play around a bit, okay? So for the Cloud Build, you'll need to create a new project or use an existing one. You need to activate to that project the Cloud Build API. Don't forget about that. And now to create the trigger. Let's take a breath in, slow down a bit, and let's see how we create an interesting builder, Cloud Builder for this. When you are in the UI, in your console of the GCP and in your correct project, when you go to the left menu, when you open the left menu, you should find a Cloud Build section. And in that Cloud Build, we want to click on Dashboard. If it's a new project, what we will see is really like this, something similar. You will be able to see set up a new trigger, and that's what we want. We want to trigger a new trigger. Yeah. And when it's a new one, you just write a name, a description. Really important description. You don't know when you are going to back at this project again. And then you're going to select in the event section, you're going to select pull request. Just for this case, you could use some of the other parts, but for this use case, let's use the pull request. And then when you click on repository, on the third arrow on the bottom, what it will be prompted is just an action, some query to select the GitHub repository that you just created before, okay? If you remember correctly. Probably you called it repository awesome project. So you will select that awesome project to connect Google Cloud Build with GitHub. And then you don't have to worry about that anymore, okay? Next, in the same screen of the new trigger, you'll find a section for configurations. Here, make sure you are selecting the Google Cloud Build configuration and just confirm that you are pointing the cloud build.yaml. But Filipe, why not Dockerfile? Well, stay tuned. This is just for the Google Cloud builds. Of course, you could use directly the Docker file. You could use build packs, maybe even auto-detect, depending on your project. But for this case, and for better guidance, let's stay with cloud-build.yaml and make sure that it's pointing and trying to find that in the root of your folder, of your project, okay? So stay tuned for the next part. And for final and last step that you need to do before creating the trigger is simply create a new variable called _Firebase token, all uppercase. And this token, you can grab it from the Firebase console of your project, okay? From there, you will get the token that you can use to deploy from elsewhere. You'll remember this environment variable. You'll see it in a bit. And with this, in the bottom of this page that you'll see a create trigger. And when you click it, you have your own trigger. It's not exactly the same that is written here, but at least in your dashboard, you'll see your own trigger for Google Cloud Builds. So how awesome is that? And you can also check the correct repository that is trying to read from, okay? You can click, open, and just be double sure that you have this ready. And that's it for Google Cloud Trigger. You don't have to think about it anymore, okay? Unless you want to make some other changes. But now let's talk about the Google Cloud Build YAML itself, the one that I told you to be aware that it's in the root of your project, okay? The Cloud YAML is really a simple, can be really complicated, but the simplest form is just some steps and some Docker image that you need to run, okay? And to create one, remember we set up the trigger to look into the Cloud Build YAML, okay? And in that Cloud Build YAML, all you have to do here is fill up with the simple steps and images. So the steps are the ones that are being run, are the Docker images that are going to be run, Docker containers, sorry. And then the images itself are, where are they hosted? So why do I have your project in those brackets? Well, because you can upload many Docker images, the containers itself, to the cloud registry of Google, okay? And basically I'm telling them, okay, I'm using these images in my project. You can use anything else, but for this example, I'm using these two. And these two, it was me who created them. They are of my project, okay? And then when you want, in each step, you just give them arguments of how to run that Docker container. For the first example, I just run Flutter build web release. You remember that from when we started the projects of Flutter. And also for the Firebase, we simply deploy token and Firebase token. You remember this Firebase token from before. And all of this, you can make it on the command line or on your own local environment, but we are lazy people. We want to have everything automated. Most of things that we have automated, even better, okay? And this is it. Don't be scared. It's okay. It's YAML. You have a reason to be scared, but it's really simple if you want to keep it simple, of course. So, but now your question is, what's in those images, right? What's those images that I'm using? Well, for the first one, for the Firebase, for those who are aware of and familiar with Docker, and even if you aren't, you'll see it's quite simple. What does this mean? I have a Docker file that will create that image for Firebase, and that Docker file simply uses a certain nodes image. I install the Firebase tools, and then I use that Firebase CLI to export. And so I can simply say deploy, Docker run, deploy, token, and it will deploy something. How awesome is that? How about that Flutter web build? Well, for the Flutter web build, it's a bit more complicated because we are using an image. We want to install all dependencies of Flutter. We want to set a Flutter root and then some path. you need to get Flutter itself, install, upgrade, configure. Yeah, that's too much, right? Well, you can do this. You can code your own Docker image, Docker file to upload to Google repository, and then it will make whatever you want. But luckily, you're right. There's a better way to do this. So instead of having this Flutter web builds like so and using the Flutter web builds, we have an image on Docker Hub, /ci/Flutter, that has everything ready for you, okay? While might be not recommended that you use other third parties images, and I don't recommend, just be sure what's inside of its image. I just want you to prove a point that Google Cloud Builds and this repository connects directly with Hub of Docker. So what does this mean? You can use any image that is inside of Docker Hub, call it in the name of the step and run it. So you can have steps for anything you wish. How awesome is that? And of course, mixed with the various triggers of Google Cloud. Awesome. I've talked for a while, but now you have the trigger setup ready. So you have the GitHub project ready. You prepare the Google Cloud trigger. We have the better understanding what's the Cloud Build YAML it is and what does it do. And now we are ready for the last part. Simple, right? So for the last part is simply to see it in action, okay? So what did we automate it? So a user, for myself, yourself, your own, created a new pull request. In this case, it's going to be a pull request to master in GitHub. That pull request, when it's triggered and it's still being evaluated, the administrator, you can configure it in many ways, but the administrator might trigger that build just to keep it in a more safer and less pricey state. That pull request will trigger that Google Cloud in the GCP, and the GCP will read your Cloud Build YAML inside of your project, in the root of your project, running those containers, right? It will run the containers, and our last step is going to be deployed to Firebase. And that's it. It deploys to Firebase. Firebase does its magic, and you have your website ready. Awesome, right? And as you can see, we can go through various steps: GitHub, GCP, GitHub again, GCP, Firebase. But everything of here is configurable, right? I use GitHub, but you can use any other repository. You can even use the Google registry or code registry. The only thing that it's, okay, we are using clouds, so you need to use GCP. But then again, you can deploy it also to elsewhere. You don't need to deploy it to Firebase. You can deploy it to any other hosting. Well, you can prepare that Docker image that you need, or use some image that exists in the Docker Hub or something else. And that's it. With this functionality, what you have is a running project that people contribute to GitHub. When it's pushed, when a pull request is created to main project, the main branch, or QA or dev, you can configure it at will, and it will deploy to the correct point of view. And why do I like this? Why do I like this structure? Because it gives me a lot of freedom of when to trigger everything, where to deploy, what to do in those configurations of steps. And I have the power and it's my own responsibility to do that. And they keep it simple because it can take a while to configure the trigger or set up everything. But after it's simple, a Cloud Build YAML that you need to change. And that's it. You don't need to worry anything more, okay? So let me see if I can just show you a quick website running. Let me share again my different screen. Stop sharing. I'm sharing my face now. Sure. Give me a minute. So entire screen. I'm going to share my entire screen. How awesome is that? If the organization can put my entire screen on, can you? Hello? Share my screen? Thank you. So I have a simple website, Flutter Web Continuous. And in this website, I'm, for example, going to create a new branch. First, I'm just going to show you Flutter Run. I'm just going to show you the website running, okay? And as such, the project is really simple. It's one page, one file. It creates a material app, and in this homepage, it's just saying hello. Okay. So if you are familiar with Flutter, it's direct. It's simple. It's just one file. For those who are not familiar with Flutter, well, it can be less code than the original project, the one that starts, but it's really simple. So as you can see, I'm running locally and it says hello. And if we go to my GitHub, let me see. If you go to my continuous website, this is public, so you can search for 𝗙𝗏𝗂𝗏 Flutter continuous website. You can see here the 𝗙𝗏𝗂𝗏 YAML. I didn't let you lie. This is it. And if you look into pull requests, I'm just going to show you. There's a simple pull request that I run with pull request to main, mastered from development. So what I'm going to do is, instead of writing hello, I'm going to say hello, Sri Lanka, 2001, okay? And I'm going to make the change. First, I need to save the change, right? Git add save. Now I'm going to commit. Let's just remove this from commit. Hello. Push. I have already the git push. For example, for I need to, I haven't set this up. Git push hello branch. Copy. Remotes. I didn't add any remotes. There we go. Git push hello branch. Hello branch. Oh no. Okay. The gods of the demo are not on my sides. I'm going to stop here. Sorry about that. I need to do more things, but it's not working correctly. But basically I have some questions of the audience. So just a second. I'm going to share again okay, just a second. I'm going to share my slides again, once again. So let's jump to okay. Thank you. So questions, and I do prefer those questions instead of running also the demo, but basically it will run and deploy it directly to Firebase. So jumping to questions. So what are the types of widgets present in Flutter? Nowadays, you can see that you have everything you need for your app, okay? I've been developing, even on my job, we work with Flutter Web. And it's really rare to not have the widget that we need, okay? And what you have to do is you code for Flutter Web, just like you code for a Flutter mobile and all, and then it will transpile as you need it to work as a Flutter Web project, okay? And what kind of widgets you can see? Well, if you are an Android developer, like me was in the past, you even have more widgets that you can work on. it's really easy to start a new project, create a project, and lists. So you don't have to be worry about what kind of widgets there are in Flutter. And mainly for material, if there's something in material design and you need to use it, there is one. Cupertino also, I don't want to talk about Cupertino because I'm not as familiar with, but for material, clearly there is everything for it. And if you need to build other widgets, you just have to encapsulate. You create your own widgets with your own necessary things you need, and you're done. I hope that answers your questions. But check flutter.dev, and you'll find the list of every widget that exists. So next question, if you may. Can we build complex apps with Flutter? Definitely, of course, definitely. And you can see a lot of showcases about that. So people are building complex stores online on the mobile, even apps for banks, they are using it. BMW are using the Flutter for their assistant app for the electric cars, So there's no limit of what apps you can build with Flutter. And it's not only apps, it's desktop apps. You instead of building like I built for web, you can just build for desktop. And the other day I gave a talk for Canonical for Ubuntu, so you can build apps for desktop. For web, there's this minor sketch. Even if you go to flutter.dev, you'll notice maybe that this website is not made with Flutter. Why is that? Well, Flutter is ideal for really those complex apps. If you're building a Flutter web app with a lot of logic, go for it. Go for Flutter. If you're only using Flutter web for a static website, maybe it's not ideal. So like in everything, you need to pick your own tools, okay? But of course, I'm biased, so I will use Flutter for everything. And I hope that answered your question, Sam. I think we have another question. That is, what is a stateful widget? Please put it, yeah. So what is a stateful widget? Good question. So Flutter is reactive in terms of the way it's developed. You develop for it. It's in a declarative way. It's not as usual as someone who used to Android SDK. That is in an imperative. You build your screens in an imperative way. Flutter learned from many sources, and one of them was React Native. Really, React, yeah, incredible enough. And React, like it is, reacts to states of changes, state changes. And what does this mean? It's a long shot, but bear with me. A stateful widget then is simply a widget that it has its own state. You can think about the state being a value, true or false, or a counter, an integer counter, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a stateful widget reacts directly to that change. So, and you can alert the Flutter app about that change. So when you are coding your app and you create a stateful widget to show a counter, what you do is you create a stateful widget that you tell him how should it show the number, should it be centered, how big should it be. You just give UI instructions, right? And then you change the state. And when you change the state, it will affect directly the UI. So that's the name from the stateful widget. It has its own state. And of course, there's the stateless. It's the opposite. It doesn't have a state. It simply shows what it has on the screen. And with mix of this both, you can make and create awesome projects here. And I hope that's clarified a bit about Flutter. So next question, is it worth to do Flutter-related project courses or doing projects? It really, I'm assuming that you are learning Flutter. It really depends on how you prefer to learn Flutter, how you prefer, not Flutter, but anything. Personally, I prefer an hands-on experience, okay? I prefer to get lost a bit. I prefer to remove some hairs I grew my beard so I could remove some from here, you know. But of course, courses are more direct. So it can be ideal for you to follow that agenda. And while in doing project can be a bit chaotic unless you join a project, existing projects, or you can follow a course. There are plenty out there. Even Flutter.dev gives out some free courses, and you can find them many around. So Shamal, I think, I hope that helped you in that regard. So it really depends on one. So next question. What are the advantages of using Flutter instead of other hybrid development methods? Thank you. I was expecting that question, and thank you for doing it. So, as I mentioned before, Flutter got inspiration from many sources, okay? I mentioned React, but you can also think about got inspiration from game engines, okay? And even from Golang. Why do I say this? Because Flutter, as you might see, Flutter in the website itself has an architecture that has a certain, on top, you have the Flutter framework, and then on the bottom, you have a certain engine. What's the purpose of that engine? Flutter, when you compile it, you are developing, but when you are ready to deploy it, it will compile into the native language of your device. So if you're on Android, it's compiled to the native code of that device. And when you are in web, like I just did, and you saw what it outputted in the build folder, everything in JavaScript, right? So it will compile into the native language. So you disregard everything from the Android SDK widgets. You don't have a bridge like React and React Native of JavaScript that communicates to widgets, Android SDK widget, and they say it's native. It's just a bridge. And you know, physically, to cross a bridge, you need to take some time. While in Flutter, you don't need to cross any bridge. You are already there. Everything is compiled. So, and when you run an app, you'll see that it's fluid. It's 60 FPS. And it's awesome in that regard. And also, of course, if it's only because of Flutter hot reloads, you instantly find the solutions. You see the changes applied in your screen immediately for mobile. So there's no other solution like this, and until so far, at least that I've seen. Many others have compiling times and run and this. And notice, even the Flutter team only now are starting to make some improvements in terms of performance. Everything else so far is more than enough. And I hope that answered your question. So we still have some more questions and time, so I really like questions. So the next question is, if the team can put it on the screen so everyone can see, if we have the time, right? Okay, so it's going to be just the last question. Okay, just the last question before we have to go. I know that using Flutter can only build 2D apps. What it makes it support only 2D, and it support 3D in the future? Good question. While on Twitter, and follow me on Twitter on 𝗙𝗶𝗶𝗃 Barroso, while on Twitter, you can, on 2D, Flutter on its basis, at least for mobile, it uses, for Android, the 𝗙cie project. So, like the question before, it compiles directly to the language itself, but Flutter draws everything on the screen. So that's why you have full control with Flutter of what is drawn on the screen. And it's it's for a reason, because it uses 𝗙cie. For those who are familiar with OpenGL, 𝗙cie is also a similar project, and Flutter uses to draw everything on the screen of the device. So that's why, and 𝗙cie is not that well for 3D that I am aware of. So that's why it's mostly for 2D. But again, there are solutions out there using platform channels, FFIs, to connect directly with libraries that do 3D magic. But again, It's a working project. It's not as much as interesting as it might see, but in the future we might see something happening in 3D. So I don't want to take much of your time. Thank you so much for your questions. I hope you enjoy my talk. We went through a bit of everything, but feel free to follow me on Twitter, Barroso. It's on your screen. And that's it from me. Thank you.